15 Things You Didn't Know About John F. Kennedy. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hello, Aluxers, and welcome back to our channel. Doesn't this huge Falcon-heavy success in those recent images of the Earth taken from outer space make you a little nostalgic about when it all began? Cause we were thinking the other day about President John F. Kennedy. What a visionary he was. Some people go down in history in style, so we thought it was high time to talk about JFK and his legacy. Born on May 19, 1917 in Brookline, Massachusetts, he was born in the wealthy family of Joseph Patrick Kennedy, who was a businessman and politician. Kennedy's paternal grandfather, P.J. Kennedy, was a wealthy banker and liquor trader, and his maternal grandfather, John E. Fitzgerald, nicknamed Honey Fitz, was a skilled politician who served as a congressman and the mayor of Boston. JFK had one elder brother, Joseph Jr., and several younger siblings. His mother, Rose Elizabeth Fitzgerald Kennedy, was a philanthropist and socialite, which makes it even more obvious that the boy's background was nothing if not luxurious and promising. But let's skip the intro and dive right to the 15 things you didn't know about John F. Kennedy. Number 1. He was a Harvard graduate. Even though he attended Princeton University in 1935, JFK had to leave after 2 months due to some health problems. The following year, he enrolled at Harvard, as he believed, according to his application, that this college could give him a better background and better liberal education than any other university. He was convinced that being a Harvard man was an enviable distinction. He developed an interest in political philosophy and in 1940 completed his thesis, Appeasement in Munich, about British participation in the Munich Agreement. He graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Government, concentrating on international affairs. Number 2. He was not the protagonist of his father's politics-related plan. You know those families that are so wealthy and powerful they are to be found at every high level in every important state-related structure? The Kennedys were one of those families, being prominent in American politics, public service, and business. In these circumstances, Joseph Kennedy was obviously looking forward to continuing the tradition. He hoped for his eldest son, Joseph Jr., to go into politics and ultimately be elected president. Unfortunately, Joseph Jr. was killed in World War II, and the father had to adapt his plan. Therefore, he helped JFK enter politics by financing and running his campaign to become mayor of Boston in 1946, and so it all began. Number 3. He was medically disqualified from the Army in World War II. In 1940, Kennedy attempted to enter the Army's Officer Cadet School, but he was medically disqualified due to his chronic lower back problems. Because of this, he then looked into the Navy as an alternative, allowing him to participate in the armed services. It was Captain Alan Kirk, the director of the Office of Naval Intelligence at the time, who helped him get in, apparently because he knew JFK's father. Thus, at the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor, Kennedy was a first officer in the Naval Reserve and was working as a staffer in the Office of Naval Intelligence. Number 4. JFK won a Pulitzer Prize. When he was 22 years old, Kennedy wrote his first book, Why England Slept, which became a bestseller. Later on, in 1956, while he was a member of the Senate and recovering from a back operation, he researched and wrote another book named Profiles in Courage. It analyzed the difficulty of maintaining political integrity in the face of party, personal, and constituent pressures. It sent a message pointing out that politicians need to strike a balance between conflicting interests in order to effectively govern. The book was so interesting and accurate that Kennedy was awarded a Pulitzer Prize in biography in 1957. Number 5. While a member of Congress and as president, JFK donated his entire salary to charity. No, Donald Trump didn't invent this trick. Kennedy began donating his entire salary to charity in 1947 when he became a congressman of Massachusetts' 11th district. He continued this even after being elected president, donating his $100,000 per year salary for presidential services. Historians also argue whether he donated his expense account of $50,000 a year as well. Anyways, if we were to sum it up in nearly 2 years as president, 8 years as a senator, and 6 years as a congressman, he donated a total of $650,000 to charity. Number 6. JFK was the one to start the Peace Corps. Seemingly the champion of unusual situations, Kennedy started the first discussion on the matter during a speech he delivered at 2 in the morning at the University of Michigan. He was a junior senator from Massachusetts in 1960, but had a daring approach nonetheless. At some point, he asked the audience who would be willing to work in the Foreign Service or spend their days as doctors in Ghana, and the number of volunteers was overwhelming. 2 weeks later, on November 2, 1960, he gave a speech at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, a speech which he included the proposition of a Peace Corps of talented men and women helping to further global peace and forward the peaceful progress of developing countries. Number 7. He had an atypical profile for a president. Kennedy was both the youngest person to be elected to the office at the age of 43 and the first Roman Catholic elected to the presidency. He was sworn in as the 35th president at noon on January 20, 1961, and since his inaugural address, he let everyone know that he trusted his administration to chart a historically significant course. He encouraged all Americans to be active citizens, famously saying, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." He was determined to fight what he called the common enemies of man: tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself, being aware at the same time that the spirit of such a fight had to survive beyond the time of his presidency, and, why not, last forever. Number 8. JFK was prone to sickness and struggled with health issues his entire life. Ever since he was 13 years old, Kennedy had to deal with several health problems, most seriously being a severe abdominal pain. In 1934, Kennedy was sent to the Mayo Clinic, where he would be diagnosed with colitis. 6 years after, he started having back pain, and he had his first back operation. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with Addison's disease, adrenal insufficiency, which made him need daily injections with corticosteroids. This treatment with steroids made him prone to bacterial infections, which he contracted quite often. 2 more back operations followed as well. Details of these and other medical problems were not publicly disclosed during Kennedy's lifetime. Number 9. He supported racial integration and civil rights. When Martin Luther King was arrested in 1960, John F. Kennedy was the right man at the right time, knowing someone who knows someone. With the help of Robert Kennedy, he contacted a judge in charge and helped secure King's safe release. This brought JFK more than 70% of the African American vote nationwide in the presidential election. However, due to strategic political reasons, he postponed promised civil rights legislation he made while campaigning, only limiting his moves to appointing black people to key positions in the state. Unfortunately, Kennedy didn't live to see the bill become law. The Civil Rights Act was passed and signed by President Lyndon Johnson in 1964. Number 10. He had all the nice Hollywood girls sing "Happy Birthday" to him. Why, of course, we're all thinking about the iconic Marilyn Monroe singing to John F. Kennedy on May 19, 1962, during his birthday celebration at the 3rd Madison Square Garden. Of course, we're also immediately thinking about all the rumors and controversy surrounding their relation, with speculations of the two having had an affair. But did you know that JFK dated Audrey Hepburn before he married Jackie? Furthermore, in 1963, it was Audrey who was the movie star tasked with singing to the president on his birthday. But you know, her far more appropriate performance didn't go down in history. Instead, it was Marilyn Monroe's performance that comes to mind. But if you would like to learn some more about our appropriate American sweetheart, click in the top right corner to find out 15 things you didn't know about Audrey Hepburn. Enjoy. Number 11. Landing a man on the moon is another thing America owes to JFK. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union had gone from the nuclear arms race to competing at exploring space. Thus, on May 25, 1961, Kennedy went before a joint session of Congress and made a speech announcing his intention to land a man on the moon within the decade. However, concerned about the costs of such an operation, he proved his great diplomatic skills when he sugarcoated the proposition to partner with the Soviet Union on a joint expedition to the moon. In an address to the United Nations General Assembly, he asked whether man's first flight to the moon was really a matter of national competition. Unfortunately, Kennedy didn't live to see his dream come true, as Neil Armstrong walked on the moon only in 1969. Number 12. He's had his fair share of personal tragedies. Other than losing his brother Joseph Jr. in World War II, Kennedy also lost several of his children. In 1955, his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy, suffered a miscarriage, and in 1956, the stillbirth of his daughter, informally named Arabella. On August 7, 1963, Patrick Bouvier Kennedy was born 5.5 weeks early. The baby weighed under 5 pounds and died 2 days later from a pulmonary disease. The bodies of the two children were moved from Massachusetts in 1963 to be next to their father in Arlington National Cemetery. Luckily, though, the family had 2 healthy children as well, Caroline and John Jr. Number 13. He gave an emblematic public speech in 1963's West Berlin. At the time, Germany was particularly vulnerable to the Soviet aggression occurring in the East. Therefore, on June 26 that year, President Kennedy gave a public speech in West Berlin, reiterating the American commitment to Germany and criticized communism by pointing out its failures. In his own words, "Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect, but we have never had to put up a wall to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us." He was met with an ecstatic response from more than 1 million people that were on the street for the speech. It was then he also said the famous sentence, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I'm a citizen of Berlin, which remains emblematic. Number 14. Kennedy received last rites 3 times before his presidency, but not before his death. Considering his poor health, Kennedy feared imminent death. Since he was a Roman Catholic, he believed in the rites, and life tricked him 3 times into believing his last moments were just around the corner. In 1947, on a trip to England, when Kennedy fell ill and was given perhaps a year to live, after being diagnosed with Addison's disease. While returning to America aboard the Queen Mary, Kennedy was so ill that a priest was summoned to administer his last rites. He received the sacrament again in 1951 after suffering from an extremely high fever while traveling in Asia, and also in 1954 after he slipped into a coma from an infection after surgery to address his chronic back problems. Number 15. The Warren Commission and the House Select Committee came to different conclusions about Kennedy's assassination. Immediately after the tragic event, the Warren Commission was charged with conducting hearings on the matter. It concluded there wasn't any evidence either of a conspiracy and that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, or of one relating to Oswald's shooting outside the Dallas police station. Many years later, in 1975, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations was commissioned to investigate the assassinations of Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the shooting of Alabama Governor George Wallace. The committee spent 2 years investigating Kennedy's assassination before concluding that the evidence from the tragic event showed that, scientifically, it was likely there were 2 gunmen instead of only 1 that the Warren Commission decided on. The Committee on Assassinations ruled that Kennedy's assassination was likely the result of a conspiracy. And that was it for today, my dear Aluxers. Thanks for watching this, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and share the video if you liked what you saw. Our question for you today is, do you think Kennedy's assassination was a conspiracy? Why? Let us know by commenting below, and as always, we'll be in there to comment with you. And still here, are you? Of course you are. Here's your bonus fact. Number 16. Kennedy installed a secret taping system in the White House. Nope, it wasn't Richard Nixon who did this one first. Apparently, in the summer of 1962, Kennedy secretly installed a taping system in the Oval Office and cabinet room. The purpose was meant to serve JFK in writing his future memoir. The system transmitted recordings to a reel-to-reel tape recorder in the White House basement, thus capturing many historical discussions between Kennedy and his staff, including discussions during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank you for spending some time with us, Aluxer. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. If you want more, we handpicked these videos you might enjoy, or head over to Alux.com for the best in fine living content on the planet. Be a part of the largest community of luxury enthusiasts in the world and tell your story.